how do you work through the idea that there's a whole bunch of people, probably the majority of people in history, have believed in something like God?
Yes.
And you don't. So is it that the other people are deluded? Are they just not educated? Have you tried to really reckon with that?
Yes. I would not use the term delusion.
Sure.
But it might be technically accurate, but I would not use it. I would say they're just mistaken. I think that I just think that humans are just like, we've evolved in such a way that we're especially prone to certain types of cognitive biases. And just I think religion is a byproduct of that.
Okay.
And
like morality and like the idea of politics and any other aspects of human nature,
I'm thinking more like the tendency to assign agency to like unknowns.
Okay.
Like you hear a bush rustle and you think it's an animal instead of the wind, and so you run, and if it is an animal, you live.
Okay.
So I think religion is a byproduct of those. I do think there's likely some component of someone somewhere instituted the religion as a form of manipulation, but I don't think that's like the predominant way that religion started.
Sure.
But I do think that that's an aspect for some of them. So I think it's just like a byproduct of cognitive biases. And then also like once you're like brought up in it, especially if you're brought up in it, it can be, you just like view the entire world through that lens, and it's like it can be really difficult to like reinterpret what you see.
So it'd be true either way, right? However you were brought up, you'd be greatly affected by their parents, whether they were secular or religious, I would think. And so it's not itself sort of, I guess in some ways it's determinative, because the vast majority of Middle Eastern countries where they're teaching Muslim people, Islam, that people believe in Islam, but at the same time, does it tell us the truth of anything? I guess does it tell us, in other words, it could be that, I'm not sure, in other words, if you grew up, say, atheist, in an atheist home, we wouldn't, maybe you would be less quick to say, well, they're not influenced by their parents. Because I would think if the cognitive bias is that we're inclined toward agency, then if say the atheist parents decide we're not going to tell the parents one way or the other what they should think.
Okay.
Would that mean that the child is more prone toward agency, toward belief in God, because they're not being sort of turned away from their cognitive bias? I haven't really thought about that before. First person I've talked to this.
I don't know. I think in the past it may have been true, but I feel like now we have answers for things.
Okay.
Because previously I think largely religion was a way to explain like natural phenomenon that we just had no concept of why these things were happening.
Right.
So there's a storm, so some deity must be angry, but now we know what storms are. And so we don't have so many like gaps in our knowledge for God to fill for someone that would not have.
Okay, so in the past, that child would be more prone toward cognitive bias, but now, even though evolution might incline your brain toward agency, the facts on the ground will be enough to sort of probably curb that person away. Is that what you think?
I think so, over time.
Well, I'll tell you something interesting about that, because in the classical world, they certainly were becoming aware that like lightning weren't bolts hurled by Zeus, and that was a long time ago.
That's true.
And it seems to me like even though we still have, this doesn't settle whether God is real. We're just talking about what people might do or how they would think and how cognitive bias affects them. But I'm wondering if they really will. I'm not so sure that history is going to be as kind to that idea, just because. Which doesn't mean you're wrong. I just think it may be that humans are sort of doomed to believe in God, from your perspective, because of a certain kind of evolved cognitive bias. And even though it's really gone back to 2,000 years, really in the classical world that they started to understand agency could be natural, and that, to be sure, way at the beginnings of the scientific revolution and before that, they were already aware of impersonal forces, laws of nature, and things like that, not, doing the work, say, that people thought previously Zeus or Mars did.
Yes.
But it's been a long time, and yet people still seem like...
How well were those things known outside of, like, the upper class?
The elites. That's a good point.
So, even if there was a child that was raised, like, as free from these influences there can be.
Yeah.
Even if they did assign agency, like what kind of agency would that look like? I don't think they would ever come up with something that's like the concept of what someone today would call God.
Okay.
Especially like ascribing all these, like maybe like a deistic God, but definitely not a theistic God.
Okay.
I don't think.
All right.